What if I told you that the next voice to echo the spirit of Elvis Presley wasn't born in a mansion, but in a tiny, broken home where even dreams felt too expensive? Before we begin, if you believe in stories that can change lives, take a second to like this video and subscribe, because this one, you'll carry with you long after it ends. In a narrow street filled with dust and noise, where electricity flickered like a tired heartbeat, lived a boy named Denial. He was just 13, skinny, quiet, and often overlooked. His clothes were always a little too old, his shoes slightly torn, but his eyes held something rare. A fire. A dream he never spoke out loud. Every night, while the world slept, Denial would lie on a worn-out charpai under the open sky, listening to songs on a cheap, crackling radio. And among all the voices, one always stood out. A voice so powerful, so alive, it made Denial feel like he was standing on a stage, not lying in the darkness. That voice belonged to Elvis. Denial didn't understand English fully, but he didn't need to. He felt it. Every note. Every emotion. It was as if Elvis was speaking directly to him, telling him, "You matter. You can rise." But reality was cruel. His father had passed away years ago, leaving his mother to work endlessly just to put food on the table. She cleaned houses all day, her hands rough, her back aching, but her love for Denial never faded. Still, she didn't believe in dreams. Not because she didn't care, but because life had taught her that dreams often break hearts. "Beta, focus on studies," she would say. "Music won't feed you." Denial would nod silently. But deep inside, something refused to die. One day, his school announced a talent show. The prize? A scholarship to a prestigious academy. For Denial, this wasn't just a competition, it was a chance. A doorway. Maybe even an escape. But fear wrapped around him like chains. What if they laugh, he whispered to himself. Because they always did. Whenever he hummed softly in class, a few boys would mock him. "Look, the village Elvis," they'd laugh. Denial would lower his head, pretending it didn't hurt. But it did. That night, he sat beside his mother as she counted the day's earnings, barely enough for groceries. "Ammy," he hesitated. She looked up, tired but gentle. "Han Beta? I want to participate in the school talent show." Silence filled the room. She stared at him, searching his face. "And what will you do there?" "I'll sing." Her expression changed, not anger, not disappointment, but worry. "Denial, what if it doesn't work?" He swallowed hard. What if it does? That question lingered in the air. For the first time, she saw something in him she couldn't ignore. Not just a dream, but determination. She sighed softly. "Think high. Try car low." That night, Denial didn't sleep. He practiced. Again and again. His voice shaky at first, then stronger. He didn't have a microphone. No instruments. Just his voice, and a heart full of emotion. Days passed. The competition arrived. The school auditorium buzzed with excitement. Students performed dances, comedy acts, magic tricks. The crowd cheered, laughed, clapped. Then came Denial's turn. His name echoed through the hall. Next participant. Denial Khan. Whispers spread. Isn't he that quiet boy? What is he even going to do? Denial walked onto the stage. His hands trembled. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. The bright lights blinded him for a moment. He looked at the audience, then down at his worn shoes. For a second, he almost walked away. But then, he remembered the nights under the stars. The voice on the radio. The feeling that somewhere, somehow, he belonged to something bigger. He closed his eyes. And began to sing. The first note was soft. Fragile. But then something shifted. His voice grew stronger, deeper, filled with raw emotion. It wasn't just a song, it was his story. His pain. His hope. His struggle. The hall fell silent. Every whisper disappeared. Teachers leaned forward. Students stopped moving. Even those who had mocked him stared in disbelief. Because in that moment, denial wasn't just a boy anymore. He was a voice. A voice that carried truth. A voice that reminded everyone of something they had forgotten, that greatness doesn't come from comfort, it rises from struggle. As the final note echoed, silence hung heavy in the air. And then, thunderous applause. Not polite claps. Not forced appreciation. Real. Powerful. Unstoppable applause. Denial opened his eyes, shocked. Tears blurred his vision. In the front row, his mother stood frozen, her hands covering her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She had never seen this side of her son. She had never imagined he could shine like this. The results were announced. And the winner is... A pause that felt like forever. Denial Khan. The crowd erupted again. But Denial didn't move. Because for him, the real victory had already happened. He had faced his fear. He had believed in himself, even when no one else did. He had proven that dreams, no matter how small, how impossible they seem, deserve a chance. Later that night, as they walked home under the same sky, his mother held his hand tightly. "I was wrong, Beta," she whispered. "Dreams don't break hearts, they heal them." Denial smiled, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the echo of Elvis lived on. Not in fame. Not in wealth. But in courage. In passion. In a boy who dared to believe. So if you're watching this right now, feeling like your dreams are too big, or you're too small, remember Denial. Remember that even the greatest voices start in silence. And maybe, just maybe, your moment is closer than you think. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because your support might just help another dreamer find their voice. What if the next legend isn't famous yet, but sitting somewhere right now, doubting themselves, ready to give up? Before we dive in, take a second, hit like, subscribe, and stay till the end, because this story might change the way you see your own life. In a crowded neighborhood where noise never really stopped and dreams often got buried under responsibility, lived a 15-year-old boy named Ayaan. He wasn't the smartest in school. He wasn't the strongest. And he definitely wasn't the most popular. But there was one thing about him that was different. He felt music, deeply. Every evening, after finishing small chores and helping his younger siblings with homework, Ayaan would quietly slip onto the rooftop. There, under the fading orange sky, he would close his eyes and sing. Not loudly, just enough for the wind to carry his voice away. His biggest inspiration? The king himself, Elvis Presley. Ayaan had discovered Elvis through an old cassette player his uncle had left behind. The sound quality was poor, the tape sometimes got stuck, but to Ayaan, it was magic. The way Elvis sang, the emotion, the confidence, it felt like freedom. Something Ayaan didn't have. His father was strict. A man shaped by hardship, who believed life was about survival, not passion. Music is a hobby, his father would say. Focus on something real. So Ayaan kept his singing a secret. But secrets have a way of finding light. One afternoon, his school announced auditions for a regional singing competition. The winner would get a chance to perform on a televised stage. Students buzzed with excitement. Ayaan stayed silent. His best friend, Hamza, nudged him. "You have to try." Ayaan shook his head. "I can't. My father will never allow it." "Then don't tell him," Hamza whispered. "At least try once, for yourself." That night, Ayaan couldn't sleep. His mind was a battlefield. Fear versus desire. Doubt versus hope. What if I fail, he thought. But a stronger voice answered, what if you don't try? The next day, with trembling hands and a racing heart, Ayaan signed up. Audition day came. The room was small but intimidating. Judges sat behind a table, their expressions unreadable. One by one, students performed. Some were good. Some were average. Then, Ayaan. He stepped forward. His throat felt dry. His palms were sweating. For a moment, he considered running away. But then, he remembered every rooftop evening. Every silent dream. Every time he wished for a chance. This was it. He closed his eyes. And sang. The first few seconds were shaky. His voice cracked slightly. One judge looked down, unimpressed. But Ayaan didn't stop. He pushed through. And then, something clicked. His voice steadied. It grew richer, fuller. Emotion poured out of him, not just notes, but feelings. Pain, longing, hope, it was all there. The judges looked up. One leaned forward. Another raised an eyebrow. Because suddenly, this wasn't just another audition. This was something real. When he finished, the room was silent. Ayaan opened his eyes slowly, expecting rejection. Instead, that was unexpected, one judge said. Another smiled slightly. You've got something special. You're through to the next round. Ayaan froze. Thank you, he whispered, barely believing it. For the first time in his life, someone outside his small world had seen him. But every step forward came with a shadow. When his father found out, everything changed. You disobeyed me, his voice thundered. Ayaan stood still, his heart pounding. Abu, I just wanted one chance. Enough, his father snapped. No more singing. You will quit this competition. The words hit like a storm. That night, Ayaan sat alone, holding the old cassette player. He pressed play. Elvis's voice filled the room. Strong. Fearless. Alive. Ayaan closed his eyes, tears slipping down his face. Why does it feel so right, but hurt so much, he whispered. The next day was the next round. Ayaan didn't go. At least, not at first. He stayed home, staring at the wall, feeling something inside him break. Until his mother quietly entered the room. She sat beside him. Why aren't you ready? He